All right, thank you for coming to today's video. We're going to focus on chapter 13. Like I said in the prior PowerPoint demonstration and video, it's probably best you could obviously follow along just looking at the PowerPoints, but I think it'd be more easier to understand if you're actually looking at the bankruptcy petition, whether it's the actual forms or we're talking about using the software that you use, because again, that way we can focus on all the issues that present itself as part of the bankruptcy petition. And remember, I'm going to do a separate whole line of videos just talking about completing the forms step by step by step so you have a better understanding of all these issues. Okay. So this chapter or this PowerPoint demonstration is going to focus on assets and liabilities. And again, some of the issues you can face when you're completing the petition and what to look out for. Okay. So get ready. I'll see you now with the PowerPoints. All right. So we're moving on now to chapter 13. Now, chapter 13, again, keep looking at the petition as I go over the PowerPoints to get a better understanding of some of the issues that I'm discussing. Here, we're going to focus on assets liabilities, which remember, all this comes down to exemptions, and exemptions do vary per state. So definitely learn the exemptions in your state. Most of them are simple enough, the car exemption, home exemption, etc., because that's something a client would need to know immediately. Now, when you go through the forms, I don't care if you're using a bankruptcy software or you're just using the forms, we do have that section which summarizes everything. Me personally, it was always, you look at it, you're like, what's exempt, what's not? This is a lot of assets here because there's a home included, possibly. So I tend to pretty much avoid that. What I prefer would always go to Section C, Schedule C. We'll go over that now. But just know that in Schedule A/B is where you're going to list everything now. You're going to list the personal property. You're going to list real property. What is personal property? Everything. Does that narrow it down for you? Now, we'll go over the petition. I'm going to do separate videos on that, just going over that and software. But what I'm trying to say is um, everything means everything. This means furniture, this means clothing. You don't have to put every article of clothing, but just put, used clothing and shoes, $100, whatever it is. So that information should be put there. That includes the cars and everything else. Now, the other issue is property. Most of the time, we tend to guide ourselves by the property appraiser's office, not websites like Zillow and Realtor.com and things like that. Your area might be different. Obviously, you'll learn that from just being in practice for a while. The lawyer will tell you, but typically it's going to be the county property appraiser's office. For one, those numbers tend to be a lot lower. And of course, the issue is once we're focusing on personal property, especially real estate, the question is it exempt or not? For example, today I was going over, I'm going to start creating exemption lists on my website for every different state and district and everything else. So, of course, I start at the beginning, Alabama, and I found out that exemptions for home there are believe it was $18,000. I know Georgia is 21,500. So right off the top, I can tell those two states have more Chapter 13 bankruptcies than a state like Florida, which has unlimited homestead exemption. Guess what? I was correct. Alabama has more 13s than 7, but that's why exemptions are always key. This pretty much controls the case. Obviously, income could push someone into a Chapter 13, but if a home's not protected, regardless of the income, you know the answer. Either they're going to do 13 or they're going to have to come up with some other way. Now, when we're dealing with the issues of the mortgage, which of course, for every asset, if there's a debt attached to it, we are going to list that in the bankruptcy petition. I just tell clients, give me the last statement from your mortgage company so I can have a better idea of what is owed. And that way, if you are in a state with exemption issues, you can do some quick math to figure this stuff out. Now, in case the mortgage is gone, in the sense that the property has been lost to foreclosure, or if it was a voluntary foreclosure, the client surrendered the property automatically. I don't care if it's a car or a home, that does no longer go now as a secured debt. The debt basically becomes unsecured, and that'll go on Schedule F. And again, we'll go over all those issues in the petition later on. But what I like to do is I like to put a deficiency balance, because that's exactly what it is. So what does that mean? It means a house obviously it will go for less. So let's say you owe 200,000 on the mortgage, but at auction, the house, regardless of the sale, sold for 100,000. Well, that balance doesn't go away. I know clients like to think that, but that's called a deficiency judgment. Now, deficiency judgment is what you would owe. And of course, the balance is what gets listed in the bankruptcy petition. I definitely put that, and I even put the address because I don't want the trustee or even the U.S. trustees to look at a bankruptcy petition and say, wait a minute, this person owes $350,000 in unsecured debt. So it's important to make sure that we're not listing this as a credit card, for example, but to put the deficiency balance. I like to put foreclosure, address is 1234 Main Street, and that eliminates any confusion. Even let's say a bankruptcy lawyer, let's say the lawyer you're working for can't go to court, so they tell another lawyer or friend, hey, cover for me, or they'll pay them, whatever the deal is. And that lawyer goes to court and is like, yeah, I don't know anything about this 350,000. But if it's listed there, trust me, they're not even going to ask the lawyer. They're gonna realize right off the top this is a foreclosure and there's no issues there to worry about. That's not going to trigger anything. What triggers everything is really a massive amount of credit card debt. Now, when it comes to what options there are available for keeping assets like a mortgage, reaffirmation, right? Reaffirmation, we'll go into detail on that. I have plenty of blogs dealing with that. And in the blogs, I'll explain the process. I'll even make a note right here, right now to discuss it. I'll put links on available so you can read more about reaffirmations. But basically, that means the debtor is keeping the debt. Typically, it applies to secured debt. It does not apply to unsecured debt. There's no rule that says it can't. It's just not the norm. Redeem. These two you'll rarely see. Redeem just basically means they're going to pay for the property in full. Maybe if it was a car or something like that with a minimal balance, that would happen. But for the most part, it's not going to. It's not going to happen. Now, when it comes to even though it might be a married couple, and even though the spouse knows that they're filing, if that spouse is not filing, they should still be listed as a co-debtor. And sometimes co-debtors are not even spouses or ex-spouses. And again, if it's an ex-spouse, they still have to be included. It will affect their credit at that point, especially if we're talking Chapter 13. Chapter 7, no. If they're up to date, then there's no issues. But if it's Chapter 13, the ex-spouse is going to find out anyway. But that information you should put to co-debtors always. A lot of, you're still going to get those calls. Do I have to go to court? I have nothing to do with this. I'm not the one filing for bankruptcy. It doesn't matter. You're just a co-debtor. You're just getting notice. That's all that means. Okay. Now, I do put here, make sure that that there's a match, just like I said in the prior PowerPoint. Make sure everything matches. Okay, so that means that when you're putting on the expenses, you put the expenses $1,200. Make sure is this escrowed. Because when you do the means test, you have to do separate calculations if the client doesn't pass. So make sure that the taxes and insurance are separate, that's accounted for. If not, all the numbers are going to be a mess. It's going to be a disaster, and it's going to it's going to mess up the case. So you have to make sure that the bank statement will say that. It'll say that the client, it'll say clearly, or the mortgage statement, I'm sorry, it'll say clearly mortgage escrow, $200 a month goes towards the escrow, and then there's your answer. But make sure that everything fits. Some clients pay out of escrow. That's fine. It's not that common, but if that's the case, just make sure again that that's accounted for. Now, when it comes to the vehicle, you do have to, we're dealing with the issues of exemptions, right? Appraisals, I typically, I've mentioned before, I just go to kbb.com, Kelly's Blue Book, and just get the information there. Now, coincidentally, if it's too high and it's a number you don't like and we have exemption issues, my answer is go straight to your local dealer, pretend you want to sell the car, and see that they give you a written confirmation. We think the car is worth this amount. Those are part of the documents that I would provide to the trustee so that they see I just didn't make up the number out of thin air. And I also provide the copy. I just do a printout of Kelly Blue Book and include it as part of the information anyway. I'm sure the trustees sometimes they'll use other ones like the Black Book, which is updated as most recently. I don't know how updated Kelly's Blue Book is, but you're generally going to be in the ballpark. It's not like you're going to be off by thousands of dollars. Now, the information that's included there, basic information as you see there, right? But make sure you get this information. What is the mileage? Some trustees might even require a screenshot of the mileage, but that's important. Why? Because that determines how much the car is worth. $10,000, 10,000 miles versus 100,000 miles is going to give you two different numbers. And of course, the same information is going to be listed of contacting, the contact information for the lender. What is the address? Because once they get the confirmation of the bankruptcy, guess what happens? The reaffirmation comes into play, and that way the creditor knows to provide a reaffirmation agreement. Okay, so we're done for this PowerPoint presentation, quick and easy. We're just putting in basic information now in the bankruptcy petition. We're going to go ahead and proceed now with chapter 14. Any questions, as always, to reach out to me, put a comment in the section down below. And of course, feel free to like and subscribe my videos. All right. And now remember, there'll be a link regarding reaffirmations in the description of this video. All right, everyone, take care, and I'll catch you on chapter 14.